writing your stories and keeping them going, all writers know this, that there comes points when you hit brick walls and your story stops and the ideas stop and you can't face the thought of sitting down and writing. How do you get through that? How do you get going again?
When I get stuck, I know that there's something wrong with the plot or something wrong with the characters. So I go back to the drawing board and look where is the flaw in the plot? Where is it inconsistent? Why is this not working? And then I can fix that. And once I'm clear again, what's happening and who's doing what and why, and then the writing flows again.
So I don't know whether I read it or whether I heard it, but there's things called Hemingway points. And James, you might be able to do on this. But I think Hemingway used to leave his work at a point where he could pick it up the next day, because basically he'd be so slaughtered he wouldn't be able to carry on. So what I do is I will write and then I'll leave a little bracketed note, so I'll be able to pick it up the next day and I'll carry on from that point. So I'd never get writer's block.
That's funny. That's what I do too.
Yeah.
One of my other writing tips would be never drink and write. I remember one of the best pages I ever wrote was I was drunk on whiskey, and they were brilliant. I was writing late at night, everyone had gone to bed, the kids had gone to bed, Francis had gone to bed, and I wrote and I wrote and I wrote, and I was absolutely magnificent. And in the morning, I didn't understand a single word of it really. So, yeah, by all means get drunk, but don't get drunk and write. What about yourself? How do you keep going?
I think you've got to find what it is in the story that's working for you, and look for that, because that's going to be the source of the inspiration to keep going. I think you can be brave enough sometimes to follow it without knowing where it's going, even if you're like, oh, this story's taking a turn. If that's what's exciting you, that theme or that emotion, then I go with it, and I sort of trust that it's all going to come together in the end. One of the interesting things about writing is, there's a certain inherent way that stories work, and they kind of have a way of figuring themselves out if you just let them do it. And obviously there's a lot of theorists like Joseph Campbell who've looked for these underlying patterns that all stories have in common. I'm wary of doing too much of that because it can become formulaic, but I do find that a story will find its natural end. You've just got to trust that what you're writing about is something that you actually are authentically engaged with, that you care about these characters, these themes, this setting, and just keep going forward, and it will correct itself. The story will naturally go towards its ending.
I found the best way is to let them speak. Just write dialogue, and if there's more dialogue than you need, then just write it. You can always cut it out, and let them talk, as if they're real people, and it will happen. Can we read some of your stuff?
This is the beginning of my 6th novel, which hasn't been published and not even edited yet, so I think I'm going to get a row maybe later on. I thought I'll give you a sneak preview. There's someone in everybody's life without whom their existence would be so much more pleasant. It is that one particular person who, even in the most cheerful and even-tempered individuals, frequently evokes the muttering, "I could kill him," or her, or them, as the case may be. Thankfully, most people tend to leave it at that. By no stretch of the imagination could Detective Inspector Russell McCord ever be called either cheerful or even-tempered. And as he was walking along the corridor towards Superintendent Arthur Gilchrist's office, his mind pictured in grim detail the various ways in which the telegenic face of his superior could be permanently disfigured. By the time he reached the door, visions of disembowelment had taken over, and when the sonoric voice called him in, it took considerable effort to rearrange his face into an expression of mild interest. "You wanted to see me, sir?" Gilchrist rose slowly from his leather chair, not out of politeness, McCord was certain, but to enjoy the advantage of being over 6 feet tall to his 5 foot 10 inches. McCord, however, despite his poor eating habits, had maintained his slim and sinewy frame by expending his energy relentlessly chasing criminals, while Gilchrist spent most of each day sitting on his broadening bottom.
So there comes a point when we're writing novels, much as we love them, that we tend to get bored with them, and all writers will know this, that you think, oh my God, I've been writing this for 6 months and I'm sick of it. How do you break through that? How do you get your writing fresh again? What tricks? Is it going out kicking the dog? Not kicking the dog, walking. Is it giving a break, not writing for a week? How do you get it fresh again?
That's a very good question. I think I'll probably leave it for a little bit, and I can do a lot of writing in the car, as in not actually physically writing, but thinking about the characters and all that kind of stuff as it's coming up. And often if I leave it, then the solution will happen. And I think there's even neuroscience are talking about this idea of sleeping on something and an idea, and then it will kind of in your subconscious formulate, and then it will arise in a day. And that I do find as well can help. If I've got a problem and I just like, okay, just rest it, then the solution will come up. Yeah.
What about yourself?
Well, I'm quite a different writer. I think the way I approach it is a little different. You've described how you like to revise a lot as you go along. I don't do any revision as I'm going along. So my approach is I try to write my first drafts with a lot of intensity, and I just keep going with them. And if I reach a point where I'm losing inspiration, like you described, then I'll skip ahead to the next scene and I'll say I'll come back to that one. And basically, if there's any problems, I say I'm going to leave that to editing. The editing stage comes last, and I'm not going to let myself get downhearted or worried about scenes that aren't working or problems. I'll fix it in editing, so don't worry about it. So that's how I blast through a first draft and deal with the kind of problems you're describing, getting disheartened, getting bored, losing faith in the story, wishing I was writing that other story that I'd had in mind for this one. And then, of course, when I'm editing it, I curse myself for setting up all of these problems.
Well, you've mentioned editing a couple of times. It's probably a good time to move on to it. What's the key to good editing?
Basically, for me, it's the opposite of how I write a first draft. So, where the first draft is very fast and unconscious and don't follow any rules, the editing is slow, attentive, detailed, and ruthless. Like you said, don't be afraid to delete words that you've put in, to kill off characters you care about. Try and read through the scene and try and find where the energy is in it, and try and keep that going and cut out all the rest of it.
I think that's the most crucial part of writing editing. For me, it's the moment when a novel becomes okay, and goes to good, and then hopefully goes to very good. Because you're absolutely right, you're brave enough to knock out characters that you've loved all the way through, to change stuff, to delete stuff or whatever. And very often I'll find that, I'll maybe take out 10,000 words, put another 5,000 in, but they're the right 5,000. And I think the writers who fail and don't make the breakthrough are the ones who are not prepared to do that. I think you've got to be absolutely savage. And like I said, words are not sacred, they're just things on a page. What about you?
I think it's hard when you start off. I felt I was worried that if I deleted a scene, I wouldn't be able to recreate it. But now, with more experience, I know that I can and I have to, and that's a good thing, because you want your story to get better all the time.
What are you looking to do when you're editing then? Do you do it forensically, word by word, or?
Yes. Yeah. When I edit, when I start thinking about the language, not one sentence will stay the same.
Really? What about you, Ian?
Yeah, I probably needs to be like that. I don't like the editing stage. The self-editing, I don't really enjoy it. I like that first draft stage. I like what James said about the intensity, the energy of getting that story down, and just like getting those words on the page and seeing them come together. And then when I go back through the editing, if I start to stop where I was of it, then normally that bit will come out. And just to make everything tighter. And if what I need to leave in, it has to add to the story. If it detracts from it, it has to go. And I've learned that from working with the book folks.
I think it's even more basic than that. I edit word by word, and every single word has to fight to stay in the book. And if it isn't doing a job, or it isn't doing the right job, then it goes, really. And that can cause problems, because you end up with half a novel that you thought was finished. But for me, that's absolutely crucial, really, that every word has to fight for its place on the page, really. At what point in the writing process does your mind stray to the next book? And the reason I mention this is publishing industries changed dramatically. And whatever you think about it, and I'm quite happy to debate it now, Amazon has changed it. Amazon has many weaknesses and many faults, but also many strengths. And what it has done is it's allowed companies like Book Folks, Joffe Books, you know, any number of books really, small companies to develop quickly and very rapidly and become big players. And you can see that all over Amazon really. But what you'll find dealing with these companies is that when you send a book to them, they're already thinking book 2. And there will come a point, if you're a writer who's trying to get published, when the editor will say, what's book 2 like? When's book 2 coming? You know, when can I start to plan it? Because the nature of Amazon and other sites like that, and Goodreads or whatever, is that readers, particularly with Kindle, expect the next book to come quickly. So at what point that you're writing, Ian, are you thinking book 2 or book 3 or book 7 or whatever?
I don't. I mean, I'm focused on the book that I am working on, but I'm conscious that there's going to have to be a follow-up to it. And you know, sometimes it can feel like you're just chasing an algorithm, and that can frustrate my writing. I think the creativity, that side of it. But it's very true. I mean, Amazon is what Spotify is doing for music. You know, it gives people an open chance to put their stuff out there. But in the same thing, if I haven't got another book lined up, you as the reader is going to go, oh, look at that one, and that's where you're going to go. And then you'll not be interested if I've got another book coming out because you've already found another author. And so that is what you're up against. It's like trying to retain the reader. That's a real struggle. So that's where the productivity has to be high, and the standard has to be high too.
What about yourself? At what point do you start thinking?
I hate doing 2 things at the same time. So I don't want to think about the next book until the current one is away with the publishers, and I know there's a few weeks break, and then I start thinking about the next one. Before that, I just don't want to.
What about yourself?
Well, this has actually been one of the most interesting things about working with the book folks. It's the first time that I'm writing a series that has recurring characters. Previously, all the novels were just self-contained. And so I'm trying to think on a level of each novel is on its own and you can read it standalone, but together they actually form a longer narrative where the characters, we see them grow and change and you have conflict between them. And so as I'm writing, I am thinking about how am I going to get them to the place for the next book whilst trying to keep it self-contained. And there's almost a level of like finishing the novels on a little bit of a cliffhanger. It still has an ending, but we're trying to get the reader already thinking, oh, what's the next book? You know? So yeah, straight away I'm thinking about it.
There's one more thing we'll talk about, and then James will finish us off with the reading, and then we'll give you the Q&A. One of the things that's come with Amazon, as anyone knows, is reviews. And they can be brutal. The worst review I ever had was, if this book was free, I would buy it. So we've all had reviews. What's your view of reviews? Do you ignore them? Do you read them?
I ignore the reviews. I'm interested in what the ratings are, for sure. I mean, I had one that was ended up as a 4-star rating, but it was, well, I bought this book for 99p, not expecting much at all, but actually this guy can write. You know, I mean, but it was like, well, I took a gamble and it paid off. And I think that is where Amazon it is good in that respect. It gives people like me a platform in order to get my work out there and let the reader decide. You know?
What about yourself?
I read every review.
Do you?
So if you were to write one, I'm going to read it, it's more than ignore. And then I think, have they got a valid point? If there's criticism.
Absolutely right, yes.
You know,
if they're talking sense.
Yeah, and I take it on board, and sometimes I think, no, you didn't get it, maybe, or it's maybe just not the right genre for you. But no, definitely read them and think about it.
Yes, I take the view that if it's sensible, and I changed my entire writing style from an early review, because they made a really valid point, and I thought, you're right, I was too much writing in the past and not enough in the present, and I just thought, yeah, that's sensible, really. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, my books have not been out that long, so I don't have that many reviews yet, but I am reading them because I'm interested to get feedback, basically. And I think if you think about it, companies spend a lot of money trying to do market research and using focus groups to find out. So if you can get it for free, just have people tell you, well, I thought maybe this would be better or that would be better. It's worth hearing it, and it's worth knowing, am I on the right track with this? Or maybe that's not working. The thing that's been a little surprise to me is, like, occasionally you just get like a 1-star rating with no review, no explanation. Yeah. And you wonder, maybe they just clicked the wrong star by accident.
That absolutely slagged me off and gave me 5 stars, so I reckon James, do you want to read that makes me feel a lot better?
Yeah, so I'll start by just reading the prologue, which is very short. This introduces us to the serial killer that is prowling the streets of Liverpool. The heavy waste disposal sacks are best. Standard bin bags tear easily. And if the piece of rubbish is desperate enough, it might claw its way out. 40 litre is the perfect size. Keep a few spares in your pocket in case anything goes wrong. The duct tape must be 48mm times 45 and black to match the bin bag. Lay your clothes out the night before with a clean mask, and make sure your sunglasses are polished like a mirror. As soon as the bag's over the head, you're only going to have a few seconds to secure it in place. Hold on tightly while the trash struggles. It's beautiful how they writhe. The blank plastic throbs in and out with their breath. The sounds they make are unforgettable. You'll hear them in your dreams. A moment of wonder, then they go limp. There's nothing left, just a waste product in your hands. Throw it away. The revulsion will linger. Take a shower. The blue body wash is best. Fennel and mint, it cuts through the mist. Make sure the drawer by the bed is full of sleeping tablets, the strong ones. You'll need them. And I'll just give you a little bit of when we meet Beth Crush, who, as I mentioned, is this Jungian thinking type. And what I wanted to do in this novel is put that type to the test. So Beth Crush is stuck in a hospital bed from which she cannot get out because she suffered a serious injury. She wants to try and solve this mystery and catch this killer because her colleagues at the police force are completely failing, but she can't leave the hospital bed. So she has to try and solve the mystery using only her powers of deduction and the simple clues that she can get hold of. So I'll just read a little bit. When Beth Crush woke up, her father was sitting by the hospital bed reading a newspaper. With an odd sense of voyeurism, she saw how much older he looked and how lonely. Or perhaps it was just the effect of the orange walls in this place. He swore to himself and shook his head as his eyes moved over the page. "What's happened?" Crush said. "Is it?" Neil lowered his newspaper. "You're awake. I got the things you wanted." He lifted a rucksack from the floor. "What were you reading?" He opened the bag but kept it tilted away from her. "Beth, I was talking to the doctor. She said you have to rest up. You almost died. You shouldn't." "Did you bring what I asked for?" she said. "Yes." He pulled out a ring-bound notepad and a pack of biros. "What are you planning to write? Your memoirs?" Pain flared in her side as she reached for the items. She could not budge the left arm. Neil must have seen the grimace she tried to hide. "Beth, will you lie back there?" "Here, let me." He set the notebook and the pen on the duvet beside her. "I'm fine. Can I see the newspaper now?" In a minute, there was something in his face, a tension of doubt or regret. "What is it?" she said. "Beth, you've got a punctured lung, broken ribs and a bruised heart. You lost a lot of blood." The doctor said, "Well, don't you think you should slow down?" She scrutinized his sad grey eyes. "Something happened. He's killed again, hasn't he?"